So, hi Michael, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time out. I know we've connected before and we've spoken quite a lot about the subject around humanity and what we both are very passionate about to
Yeah.
bring it into organizations and bringing people first mindset and the mindset philosophy of making sure that organizations grow with the help of appreciating and valuing and empowering the people who work with them and for them. So for the people who don't know you or haven't
hmm
come across you yet, I would love you to introduce yourself first.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me. Again, my name is Michael Mattson, and I too, as you said, am passionate about humans' place within business and maintaining that. And at my core, I believe that businesses, when you strip everything away from it, businesses are about human-to-human relationships. And I think that that's the only path to sustainable success for both customers and businesses. I am in, I'm involved in a lot of different things. And I try to bring that same passion and mindset to each and every one of them. I'm with the XM Global Collaborative. I have my own consultancy, which is 𝗂𝗂𝗺 and I have a number of other things on the side and some things in the works coming soon,
Yeah,
which I'll be posting more about that as we kind of get it further along. But some really great things around emotional intelligence and bringing that into both an individual and then also helping organizations become more emotionally intelligent or bring that into their systems. So thank you again for having me and really looking forward to this conversation.
thank you. And thank you for the introduction as well. And like I said earlier, that we connected. I mean, I've been talking about we talk about customer centricity a lot. And my background is very much started off around data. And as
Mm-hmm.
my career grew and I was passionate about lean and Six Sigma and
Mm-hmm.
efficiency. And then I love marketing and consumer behavior and all those elements came into it. And then when I did my very first CX course with Ian Golding in 2019, and that's when I looked at myself and I thought, oh my God, I've been doing this all my life. I've been, saying all these things all my life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is the things I should be doing. And that's when my CX mindset triggered off. And then
Yep.
having met great people across the organizations on LinkedIn with a similar mindset, and it was all about CX. And then when I met Sandra Thompson and I did her course on emotional intelligence, that added on to the CX hat as well as emotional intelligence. Okay, we need to add that too as well.
Yep.
And then after that, uh, Rory Sutherland and his human, behavioral science and all those elements. And I thought, okay, this connects as well. And I thought,
Yep.
okay, putting it all together and connecting all the dots, we're going beyond CX. And it's a lot more about, and then when we talk about customer centricity, it's about not just CX for the customers, but what we're doing internally. And why is it so
Yeah.
important to bring that humanity, that culture of caring and empowering and making sure your staff are valued and understood? Because I've worked in corporate environments where I've seen that not happening. And
Mm-hmm.
and even though you're the data guy, but you have all the other knowledge, and you want to, when you join a company, you want it to grow. You treat it as your own. You want to grow with it. And when you're pigeonholed and you have all this skill set in your employees or your people who work for you who are passionate for what you do and your values, it's important not to ignore them and bring them on board because they are the ones who are going to make your company grow. And then I put it all
100%.
together into my six-stage framework. And then when I started, understanding my why and why am I doing what I'm doing, and I realized it's all around that element of being real, being genuine, being human, and empowering those people and understanding people as your customers. They're not just numbers, they're not just
Yeah.
transactions.
Yeah.
And then when I came across your profile, and like I said before, that title you have for the love of humanity, and I thought, hey, there's somebody else out there who's saying the same thing, you
Yeah.
know, and I know we speak the business language to make them understand what it means to empower humans and
Mm,
bring that humanity into organizations. And now, I mean, everything is moving towards culture. Everything is emphasizing on that imperative of having the right culture. What's your
yeah.
take on that moving, that change in those perception of CX now, which is now more internal than external?
Yeah. First of all, great. It definitely needs to move more internal, and organizations have to take a hard look at themselves and how they operate and how they treat the people at any point in the system. And it has to be more than just for profit. It has to be, for kindness and humanity and really just wanting the people that you have stewardship over to take care of them, ensure that they have what they need to do their jobs. They have an environment, and that's part of that helps them do their jobs. And then just that you're just a good human being to another human being. I mean, I think sometimes we forget about that simple premise of just, being kind to one another, looking out for one another. And and it's so easy within business environments to kind of strip the humanity out of it. And we've all heard that, it's just business kind of mindset, right? And some cultures it's like cutthroat. And it doesn't have to be that way. And you end up really costing yourself a lot of great team members. You cost yourself a lot of um, resources in general. You spend a lot more money when you have a terrible culture. And so I think looking internally is really important. And that's where, that whole concept kind of made me think about, the framework of emotional intelligence. It's like, okay, well, why aren't organizations using that simple concept of, self-reflection as part of their kind of rituals and regrounding themselves and it ends up being beneficial to everybody. So, I mean, I saw this time after time within the Postal Service, um, where it's very, efficiency based, right? Very efficiency minded. Um, and yet they don't often accomplish efficiency because of some of these cultural things. So it's like you have the mindset for one thing, and then you actually undermine your ability to accomplish that because of the things you sacrifice in the pursuit of efficiency. So, like, what are you really doing, right?
Yeah,
So I think that has frustrated me in the past, and you and I have a lot of shared background in Lean Six Sigma and like data orientation and things like that. And I had a similar development as well, and my own self-reflection and realizing that like it just kind of clicked one day. What are we here for? And I think more and more organizations are starting to wake up to that, which is great. And they're going to see more and more of a divide from a differentiation perspective and a profit and sustainability perspective than those who just don't get it still. And so you'll
yeah.
continue to see that gap grow.
I was going to say that's the thing that now everything is about, it was about CX and ROI, but now it's how do you bring these elements into an organization and actually prove it by
Yeah.
financials it works. And how have you found that to be easy or difficult to do?
As far as taking care of people as an RO from an
Yeah.
ROI perspective,
Yeah, the thing is fluffy, right? So they don't want to do it. They
it is
think it's
fluffy.
just a waste of time.
Yeah.
We need to concentrate on our sales. We need to concentrate on,
Yeah.
bringing the customers in. It doesn't matter what, however, the employees they just have to do what we tell them to do. But how
Yeah.
does that actually matter? Why is it important?
I mean, if you're gonna, get to task like brass tacks here, right? Look at your retention, look at churn. People have choices. So at the end of the day, if they hate the way that they're treated, it's only a matter of time before they dip out and before they go to an organization that has a better culture, one that actually cares about them. one of like a company that puts their money where their mouth is, right? That actually walks the walk. And because people are not dumb. They know when they're being BS'd. They know when they're being told, hey, this is a great culture. We're like family here, like all of those things. And then you never actually execute on that. It's like, yeah, okay, like how much longer am I going to allow myself to be gaslit? So,
Yeah,
look at retention, whether it be customer retention, whether it be employee retention. Um, that's gonna like y- a lot of a lot of organizations in this place with a terrible culture because they have not done that self-reflection. They have not made that connection yet. They're looking at their, you know, super high churn rates and they're like, what's going on? It's like, dude, look at yourself. Look at
totally
what you're
agree.
doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned that word family because there's no such thing in an organization as a family because nobody throws your family out even when you're doing something wrong.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Well,
but
I mean, in most families, that's true.
but I do know that we've had this conversation as well that it's all about, I mean, the biggest brands out there are the ones who created that community internally and externally. And what kind of opportunities that you see now going forward is changing that approach? You take the community approach within organizations.
Yeah, I think what's fascinating here is people forget that humans are social beings at the end of the day, right? And they need to have connection with one another to some extent. Even if you're an introvert, you still need connection, and it just looks different, right? And it may be with a smaller group of people, but you still need human connection because we are programmed in our brains to it's a survival thing, right? We need each other to survive. And so that is still there, right? And so what I've actually seen is, especially in organizations that have a toxic culture, that employees are starting their own communities internally. They're starting their own outlets. They're finding that like they have that need and they're making it themselves because they're not going to wait on the organization to do it. So I think
Yeah,
that right there just shows how important having a community is, and how a lot of organizations are not meeting the need there, and they're not taking the time to provide um, this the place to have that community. Um, but the organizations that end up, being able to foster a sense of community, um, they end up being more successful. They end up, people, again, they like to stick in that area, stick with that organization, or stick with the people that they like to work with, if not even the organization, right? They stick around for their friends, that they
yeah,
have at work. And that means something and it improves quality of life. So I think
yeah,
that this is a very, very important topic. And, you can shift that sense of community to a few different words too, like mentorship and, having uh, just even, social opportunities, things like that. Those are all important because we spend so much time at work, right? We spend
yeah.
a lot of our lives working. And so if we're kind of missing some of those things, then, we feel that hole in our lives.
And I wanted to add to that as well. I guess where we talk about community is based on purpose and
Yeah.
based on belief of doing something positive to make a difference. And because you
Yeah.
believe in that purpose, because you want to be part of something important, you make that extra effort and
Hmm.
you move that extra mile to make it happen. And there's a really
Yeah.
interesting story, I'm sure you would have heard this, about NASA where somebody walked in and spoke to the cleaner and said, "What do you do?" And he said, "I send um, the astronauts to the moon." It was
Hmm.
that his purpose, even though he was the cleaner, he
Hmm.
knew that. part of his role of being a cleaner was to make sure everything was right and clean, because what he does is as important as the astronaut who's flying to the moon. He's part
Yeah.
of a whole community, a whole purpose, a whole goal. And that is why, as a leader, now we come down to it all, is the one who then sets that mindset, sets that
Hmm.
culture. And when we say leaders, we always think about the CEOs and the CXOs and the
Yeah.
CMOs and everybody else.
Formal
But
authority.
yeah, but a leader is anyone who is
Yeah.
managing someone, even down to the line managers. They are also leaders of each department and groups, and
Yeah.
and within that, and it's as important for them to have that culture mentality as much it is at the top, who don't get to
Yeah.
sit with the guys on the shop floor. And what's your take on that approach? Because how do we change that mindset?
Mm. Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because people want to feel like they're doing something important. Like nobody wants to feel like they're just like pressing keys on a keyboard, or they're just moving things down the assembly line or whatever. They like you want to know that you're contributing to something, something bigger than yourself. And so, leadership, like to your point, it's not always those with formal authority. Sometimes it's those, like some of your leaders may be some of your coworkers that you don't report to. They may be, they may hold some, they may not have any, significant title at all. But to your point, it's those who can bring a vision to life and help you connect emotionally to it and help you see yourself within that vision. And you need clarity, right? You need clarity to that, and a path to accomplishing that vision or to getting to that that place. Um, but it's so crucial because it's kind of like if you're kind of going in every direction, you have no direction at all, kind of thing. Like it's it's from an organizational level, if you have people that are not aligned behind a common vision, then you have a lot of waste. You have a lot of wasted time, effort. You have a lot of wasted resources. You have a lot of confusion and a lot of emotion, like stress, right? People are more stressed out when they don't really know what they're supposed to be
Yeah,
doing. And so having that kind of clarity is crucial to kind of gel everybody behind, and get everybody moving the same direction. And you do feel like there's some camaraderie, right? There's some like you have people that like we're all contributing to this same thing, and it just feels good, and it
yeah,
feels like it's important. And if an
yes,
organization doesn't have that, they're missing out.
yeah, yeah. And now that you're talking about clarity, I think this is one of the reasons why I wrote my book, and I
Mm,
came up with that framework to help with that clarity and that methodology for the approach. So my framework for customer centricity and CX and everything else under the umbrella is starts with culture, communication, leadership, more
hmm.
towards then goes to into intentional CX, being
Yeah.
authentic of what you want to deliver and how you want to deliver. It talks about the employee experience and why employees matter and what they need to be heard and seen and valued, which then resonates to the similarities of how you then engage with your customers. So that's customer CX, that's section 4. Then
Yeah.
fifth one is, well, how do you then engage? If you have all that done right, how do you then speak to your customers and your employees? And how do your employees speak to your customers? This is where
Mm,
behavioral science and emotional intelligence comes into it. And
yeah.
then finally, the data side of it is how do you measure, capture, and continuously improve? So that was my kind of approach to bringing that clarity into
Yeah.
organizations. Do you have something like that?
So I've really been using the emotional intelligence framework that was first developed by Daniel Goleman, and I've taken kind of an adaptation of that into more of a systems level look, right? So in that, like part of uh, part of the emotional intelligence framework, you have self-reflection, you have self-management, you have, social management, like, and then, so you have this framework, these pillars, and then, I've kind of made an adaptation of a kind of a parallel system. So you have like instead of self-awareness or along with self-awareness, you have kind of like system awareness. And so you do the work to understand the broad systems and ecosystems within your organization, right? And so you're looking for misalignment of those two fostering humanity and also, even efficiency within that. Like you're looking at how it actually treats the humans within those systems. Um,
Yeah.
Instead of self-management, you have like policy alignment, right? Because policies are how organizations manage themselves, regulate themselves. And so looking at are policies too rigid? Do you build in exceptions so that you can fit in with the flexibility needed to sustain humanity, right? And to sustain relationships. And a lot of times policies are too rigid and they don't have clarity on where an employee can deviate from that policy and to what extent to be able to meet a person in the middle. And so they
Hmm.
usually have to make that judgment call, or they don't at all, and they pass that rigidity along to the customer, and it creates a terrible experience, right? So there's that.
Yeah.
And then for social awareness, I have listening architecture, which is a simple, making sure everybody, can their voices are heard, and then you actually do something with it, and you have that cycle. And then for relationship management, culture building, right? Which is how we actually show up and how we operate within, you know, like what fits with our organization and what do we like, how do we celebrate certain behavior? How do we reinforce certain behavior? Um, and how we actually like do like act on the things that we say and do we
Yeah.
actually follow through on the things we say? So there's things like that. So I kind of use that kind of framework because I think it keeps humanity at the center, but then also more importantly, it looks at the underlying systems that are at play that humanity is usually conflicting with. And so I'm not just looking at the human elements, I'm looking at, well, how do we have everything set up? Because that's influencing the human elements and it's
Yeah.
impacting the human elements, and we can't ignore that. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Awesome. That's brilliant. That's great. And I think going forward, more and more, as I'm observing on LinkedIn and all the thought leaders out there have now, understood that and are all near enough talking about a similar kind of approach and,
Yeah.
importance of it, especially now with AI and,
Yeah.
the tech and the automation and, everything else that's going on about it. And I know I've come from, I worked at KPMG as a management consultant. I've seen what they've done, and
Hmm.
and a lot of agencies out there who would go in and would look at companies and say, oh, you could reduce so many heads of,
Mm.
by automating this process or doing that kind of thing. And what would happen is the company wouldn't really do it right, and they would just get rid of the people
Yeah.
and they would say, right, now they're falling over because they haven't sorted out their processes, they haven't automated anything. And now, even more so with the AI coming on board and text and everything else, it's doubling that kind of mentality and mindset that you can remove humans
Yeah.
by embedding into it. Yes, tech is there and it's supposed to
Hmm.
help, but it shouldn't remove human beings because a lot of companies have also now fallen over and realized where they were like, especially CXO started from customer service side of the end of that
Hmm.
journey,
Hmm.
and that's where majority of the people were being replaced because of tech.
Yeah.
So the question that I have for you is like, if organizations strip out that human connection with customers through embedding AI in the element of we're going to be efficient and cost effective.
Mhm.
How do customers lose on the outset of all of this, and how do and
Yeah.
then on the back of it, how do companies lose as well?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I definitely think they both lose, especially when they're not careful. So first of all, a lot of organizations are now realizing that they don't have the data or architecture to support AI in the way that they're trying to use it. And so by that, like trying to make efficiency gains by reducing headcount. They're trying to plug in AI, and the output of that is really poor quality. And so it does a
Yep.
really terrible job. And so immediately, especially when you have an AI, some kind of, it could be, an AI bot or something like that, or, kind of a chat bot or whatever, like however you implement it, say it's customer facing, that customer is now having to go through this channel and it is not giving them the right answers. It's not, it may not be improving efficiency for that customer at all. And what I've personally experienced is I do all of that work chatting with a robot, and then at the end of it, it says, "Well, I can't really help you." And so it like connect me with a human anyways. And so it's just like you make them go through. It's being used as like a blown out IVR system, right?
Yeah.
Like in reality. And so you're going through all of this to try to get like maybe I'll try to connect you with some self-service assets or whatever, or at the end of it, none of those apply because maybe it doesn't even understand your situation fully, and so it can't even pull that right information to the front. And so you end up connecting with one of your reps who are now under more pressure and more stressed out because you just you've reduced how many heads you have in your customer service operations like by a third. And so with the same expectations of, how those reps are handling those customers and the volume and all of that. And so you get somebody who's stressed out, who can't really listen and understand your issues, or are maybe a little bit curt, and just trying to rush you off the phone. And so you receive a very, very poor customer experience. But
Yeah.
in addition to that, the organization is struggling because you've just lost a lot of institutional knowledge because you reduced your headcount without probably even bringing a lot of that into your systems or knowledge bases first.
Yeah.
You're just like, yeah, just across, the board, these groups, we're reducing it, by 33%. So who cares who's actually caught up in that? So
Yeah.
you lose the skill sets, you use the knowledge, um, you lose culture, right? Because I mean, you're sitting next to, 100,000 or however many of your colleagues, and then suddenly a third of them don't show up because they're let go. Like you're not feeling good about where you're sitting because
Yeah.
you're probably thinking, okay, when is my time?
Yeah.
And so how
Yeah.
can you operate to that, to the level of quality that you need to and bring your full self to taking care of that customer? It doesn't happen. And also that customer is not going to be that employee's priority if they're thinking they're going to get canned in 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
They're like, what am
True.
I like I'm just going to go through the motions, keep my head down and see what happens. And so everybody loses and the organization, um, I mean, we're already seeing this in a lot of in some companies like what was that company that had laid off a bunch? They had Klarna? Yeah, Klarna.
Yeah. Lana.
Uh
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And then they end up, flip reversing directions and like, okay, we need to,
Yeah.
rehire people because this bet did not pan out. And so you spend a lot of money because we all know that it's more expensive acquiring, rehiring employees, just the same as it's more expensive to get new customers, like all of that,
Yeah.
it costs more money to do all of that. And so your big bet in automation and AI, because you didn't really do the thinking about how this really fits in and how you can do it strategically, and that you even had the foundation to sustain it, then now
Yeah.
you're spending overall more money. And so even if you just care about your profits and you know regulating those costs, like it doesn't always pan out, and your culture will never be the same. It
Yeah.
will not be the same.
So Klarna is a really great example. Uh, Forbes have said around 80% of any AI projects have failed because they haven't started the right way or asked the right questions.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then a couple of years ago, when customer service inbounds were removed because they thought 80% or 60 to 80% of the calls were purely just asking questions. So they moved
Mm.
that towards, fact finding, chatbots, and getting them to answer those questions. PwC have said, turned around and they've done their research and they've said 75% of human interaction is still important, especially in important issues. So if I'm
Hmm.
calling in to a service department, it's because I have an issue. I don't really
Yep.
want to be talking to a chatbot. I don't really want to be,
Yep.
I want to go straight to a human being. So none of these, or most of these chatbots are not trained or asking how important is this issue right now? Are you just asking for information, or do you actually need to speak to someone because you're in trouble or you have an issue? And
Hmm.
I think that's where it's lacking, and that's the disconnect of the human interaction,
Yeah.
and loss of trust, which then,
Yeah.
if you don't have trust, you don't have loyalty, and they will go somewhere where there is. And how are you
Yeah.
finding that change in this happening over time, and where do you think it's going to go?
Yeah. I mean, look, like I think we're seeing it on a very broad scale, not even just within customer to business relationships, but from just human to human level relationships, right? Look at the quality of our connections and relationships in a digital first culture, right? And it's harder to build genuine connections built off trust with people. It just is. You have to put more effort into it, and it's easier not to do that, right? The path of least resistance is like take a relationship only like so far. That's like the easy part of maybe chatting with somebody online, and same with a business, right? Going through that, and then like you don't ever form that kind of connection. There's the opportunities to like build that trust are not there, and the opportunities for like a business to be able to rescue a customer and say take a very complex situation and like make it into a very positive experience, like oh my gosh, like
Mm,
you actually were able to fix this issue for me and turn it around and turn it into an even better experience. Like those opportunities for that flip, and those opportunities to like come through for your customers and demonstrate your brand values to them, um, and show them that you actually mean business and that you're actually here for them and build that trust-based relationship, you are losing those in a lot of cases through this obsession with efficiency. And I'm not saying efficiency is bad. I've written articles about this. I've done lots of podcasts about this. Efficiency is necessary. Strategic efficiency is necessary. So like humans first, right? Thinking about how do we make things more efficient to uplift humans, right? To benefit that relationship and not just like, let's plug in automation here, let's throw AI in here. And to your point, the use cases, the problems that we're actually trying to solve is where it starts from a business perspective. If we don't understand
mm,
where the challenges are in building a relationship, and then look at how we can improve that, right? How we can maybe leverage AI or automation
yeah.
to to make that a more impactful opportunity to build a relationship. Like look at those opportunities, right? Don't just try to plug in AI anywhere and everywhere, right? It's not a magic bullet. It has
Yeah,
a very, very, you know, specific value to an organization. And a lot of organizations that are trying to implement it, they don't even really understand what it is and what it does
yeah,
and its strengths and weaknesses, or how to develop guardrails to protect human relationships, or where to put it, or or even having dedicated teams to really thinking thoughtfully about where it belongs and how it belongs, and how it changes your overall relationship with customers or employees. Like, you have to think about all of this and look at the broader systems and see, are there, like, find the problem first. Don't come at it with a preset tool that you're going to use, and say what is appropriate to fix this problem. And then if AI is that, then great. If it's
yeah,
not, which it usually is not,
yeah,
then we'll look for that tool instead. Um, so you're dead on about starting with a use case. You're dead on about humans in general really just losing out
yeah.
when we're kind of so narrowly focused on getting AI built into our systems, because at the end of the day, it's shiny and we can use it in marketing or whatever, because for some reason people still think that's a good thing, even though every time now I see it, I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
Like, you kind of
I totally
you can
agree.
anticipate, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, but I think my personal fear, and this is going back to like maybe 5, 6 years ago. I mean, I worked in a banking environment most of my life. Yeah, I wasn't one to convert to a banking app. Yeah, my mother, who was 70 at the time, she was able to use the banking app quite
Mhm.
easily and she trusted it. But I guess because I was internal and I was looking at data and I could understand
Mhm.
the risk of fraud and everything else, and I was always
Yeah.
worried about how she was using it, what she was doing, making sure she wasn't answering any, fraudulent emails coming through from what looked like her bank and things like that. So it took
Mhm.
me some
Yeah.
time to trust and bring it on board. But with this now, going forward, and we're talking about human first and empowering humans and why is it important. But
Yeah.
security and that realism of engaging with a person rather than speaking to a chatbot or speaking to a, digitally. I mean, if it wasn't for digital, we won't be talking right now. You're on the other side of the world.
Yeah, right.
Uh,
Right.
I would have never got to meet you. So there's positives in everything, but it's
For sure.
how some people are using it.
Yeah.
And I think that, which is why we both of us are now, shouting out loud about that human first, and hence
Yeah.
that group that we've started on LinkedIn as well about hashtag human first is to help
Yeah.
educate everybody and bring everybody on board with a voice to say what were their experiences around being human first, and
Yeah.
why is it important for them as an employee or as an organization, and what's not working going forward. And that importance of humanity, I think going, I'm still a bit wary because there's a lot of organizations out there who are selling the ideal idea of automation and androids and bots and computers
Hmm.
and and I'm a very sci-fi geek. I watch loads of
Yeah.
those type of movies where they're very futuristic of things of happening and how they
Yeah.
would work. And I would imagine, like Mission Impossible when he's walking through and with the retina of his eyes and this personalized adverts happening. And I would imagine, would that happen in my time, or would it be
Yeah.
any different? You know, and where do the people come into it? But it's all about the experience of shopping. You're there, you want to physically touch things, you want to speak to someone, get their opinion, what they look, and otherwise everybody can go on board online and buy something,
Hmm.
digitally click, it comes over, but
Yeah.
there's no experience there, yeah,
Yeah.
basic things. We don't really need that touch, the human touch or the human engagement. And I just recently put up a post about an exponential curve where the height of experience is required based on the value of the purchase that you're making. So like buying a bottle of beer is very different experience to buying a house or a car or
Yeah.
or a yacht. The level of experience you'd want to experience, it has to be immersive. And we're
Yeah.
losing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that's really important. But I know we uh, went over our time already, but I would love you to leave me with something, and for the audience, uh, your kind of thought on this moving forward and how we can make that change or make that difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the way that I think about it every day is just, um, a lot of words that we apply to these things can kind of become buzzwords or, they kind of lose their meaning the more you say it kind of thing. Um, but like even the word experience, right, can become kind of like a buzzword. Like, what's that really mean? But the way I look at it is, find your passion, find what you actually connect to and care about. I value relationships. I value human connection. And I I just look for opportunities to bring connection back into this world. And I look for opportunities um, to to reach out to people and make those connections. I look at opportunities within my work to put relationships first, right? And to actually like design these experiences to support relationships. And so I look at it from that lens, and I think that it has to be a conscious effort, right? And we have to sometimes swim upstream and do things that maybe from short term perspective may not look like the most efficient route to take, but we can look at it from a strategic perspective of like, as an organization, do we care about relationships? If yes, if that is what you want, and not all companies care about that, and that's fine. They do their own thing and they're going to have their own challenges and maybe be very good at certain things, but um, you as a human know you cannot go to them and look for a relationship and look for connection and look for that human element. So if your business is such that maybe in your vision statement you have, caring about others or things like that, and like that's part of your brand identity, then you need to actually execute on that. You actually
Yeah,
need to look at every single level and at every single time that you're looking at a piece of your architecture, your systems, your data, your platforms, whatever. Like, is this accomplishing what our brand is setting out to do? And that should be a question every business asks, because the whole point of having these vision and mission statements is for alignment. And so are we actively keeping that in mind and reinforcing that at every single point? And it'll show if you're not, because a single system that's misaligned to that sticks out like a sore thumb to our customers
yeah,
and employees. They know it, they feel it, and it erodes that trust and it erodes that relationship. And it only takes that one thing. You can be incredible in every touch point and foster relationships and build trust and take care of people. And then it just takes one thing that's misaligned, one crappy system that that does not, care about human connection, and it all goes downhill. So you have to be really very conscious about that. And you have to be consistent. Just like in
yep.
relationships between human to human, if we're not consistent with one another, like, if I tell you that I care about you and then suddenly I'm talking behind your back and which I don't do, um, I'm doing these things. That's not being consistent to what I say I value, and therefore you trust me less. It's the same way with the dynamic between more humans and or organizations, which are just built up of humans. Like, it's really not that complicated. It's complex, but it's not complicated, right? There's a lot of
Yeah,
moving parts, but yeah. So that's what
yeah.
I would leave everybody with.
I thought I would just add to that as well. I just saw a video on Steve Jobs, in the old Apple times when he was referring to what makes them different. And he went back to the values. And this is what I'm seeing now after like 20, 30 years of, that cycle coming back is
Yeah.
we have to remind ourselves to live by our values. And the values
Completely.
then generate the culture, and the
Yeah.
culture then cycles all the way down to everything else we talked about. So living
Yeah.
your values is key, and that's where humanity has to be there. The importance of that connection for one-to-one human and making customers feel like they're human, not numbers, making your employees feel they're human, not numbers,
Yep.
and or a cog in the whole big machine. So I love the
Yep.
conversation. I'm sure we're going to have plenty more going forward in the future.
Sure. Good.
And thank you for your time. Really appreciate it, Michael.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Great conversation as always.